PowerPoint hours.
Yeah, yeah. Make you the host. All right. Welcome everyone to Soul Space, Age Like a Yogi with our special guest, Victoria Moran. My name's Dan, Soul Space assistant. So Victoria Moran discovered yoga as a teenager in the 1960s and has been on a spiritual path all her life. She's the author of 14 books on well-being, eclectic spirituality, and vegan living. Her classic is Creating a Charmed Life, which has sold over 250,000 copies and foreign rights to 32 countries. Her latest book is Age Like a Yogi, largely inspired by yoga teacher training with the Masla sisters and family in 2020. She has also taken Ayurvedic training at the Ayurveda Health Retreat and the Integral Yoga Institute, where she was certified as a Raja Yoga instructor. Victoria hosts the Main Street Vegan podcast, and she's the founder and director of Main Street Vegan Academy, training and certifying vegan lifestyle coaches and educators since 2012. She lives in New York City with her husband, Reverend William Melton, and together they founded the Compassion Consortium, an interfaith spiritual center for animal advocates. Thank you so much for being here, Victoria. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Dan. You know, when you have somebody on who's lived a long time, the introductions get long. So thank you. Thank you for doing that and doing it slowly. You know, there's something to be said for doing things slowly that we think we ought to rush through. I'm trying to remind myself of that. So I'm going to jump right in here with the PowerPoint if indeed it's going to work. Oh, please, gods of technology. I'm going to try again. I'm going to jump out of the powerful position of being able to share, pull this up. Hello, there it is. Let's see. And it's taken up my whole screen. So to get here to share is going to cause me to have to use both hands at once. Slideshow from start. Woohoo! Boy, that is so much using full screen, I can hardly see the screen. How's it looking to you guys?
Looks good.
Okay. It looks good?
Mhm.
Okay, let me see what the next one looks like just for the heck of it. Okay, well, it's very full screen mine, but that's all right. I put it together. I should be able to talk about it. Now, is it going to let me go back to that opening screen? No. Oh, you know, technology. It's becoming alive. Interesting. Another topic of conversation. I always wonder when AI is going to get up and rebel. But anyhow, we're here to talk about aging like a yogi. We're going to be talking about yoga and Ayurveda and some other things that I have learned along the way. And I'm assuming, given your affiliation with Soul Space, that you're certainly familiar with yoga and probably with Ayurveda as well. If there's anybody that just truly is not, could you kind of give me a
showers. You can expect a high of 71 degrees Fahrenheit and a low of 63 degrees.
okay, that's interesting. I just heard the weather. Did anybody else hear the weather?
SK is not on mute.
Oh, okay. Well, SK, maybe you could mute if you're going to be listening to the weather. Sounded like a pretty good weather report, though. So, anyway, I want to introduce you to my very first yoga teacher. This is Stella. When I first discovered yoga, and excuse me, I was just speaking on a cruise and I came back with a little gunk, so I'm going to have to cough here for a second. Please let me mute. I'm sorry. Okay. Why wouldn't that let me mute? Because I was supposed to be embarrassed or something. That did it. All right. I learned about yoga when I was 17 because I was looking for God in the public library and I found 3 books about yoga. But I was in Kansas City and it was 1967 and we didn't have yoga. People thought it was yogurt or something odd. And yet, when I moved to London, ostensibly to go to fashion school, I found on the wall of a brilliant bookshop in London, Watkins Books. Does anybody know Watkins Books? Do we have any Anglophiles? Watkins Books is this little spiritual bookshop in a beautiful alleyway near Trafalgar Square. And in order to have your shop in this alleyway called Cecil Court, you have to be a bookshop or a map shop. So it's an amazing little area. And these were all spiritual books. And I walked in and thought, oh, this is my Harvard. This is my Oxford. And it did turn out to be. And on the wall, there was a sign about yoga classes with this amazing woman. She's now 100. This picture was taken last year. She still teaches a chair yoga class every week. She hosts a women's salon every Sunday morning in her flat, which happens to be a third floor walk up. Boy, I am having so many technical problems tonight, everybody. I am pressing the arrow and it is taking me nowhere. So I think I'm going to have to just stop and breathe and do the yoga thing on the on the tech. Do you ever find that you sometimes have to do yoga in life? Whoops, I don't want to end the meeting or leave the meeting. I also have a background in 12-step programs. And I remember once this lovely man came to a meeting and he said that his car had broken down that day. And he said that before he completely lost it, he decided that he would do all of the 12 steps on this fact that his car had broken down. So he said, I admitted that my car was not working, and I came to believe that if I would take it to the mechanic, it could be fixed. And I made a decision to turn the car over to the care of the mechanic. And then I made a list of all the problems with the car, turned that over to the mechanic, and he totally did every 12 step on that situation until he ended up with that he was telling all his friends about this mechanic and carrying the message to those who had broken down cars. Now, is anybody seeing this picture of Stella? Yes, okay. So I'm going to go back into slideshow mode and see how far I get. Slideshow. Okay, now we're going to, yay, I got to move forward. Okay, so one of the things that I have learned, I mean, we all, when we're out in the world and we talk about yoga, people think we mean asana. And so we'll talk about that first. Oh, I'm so sorry. Before this picture of Stella, there was another slide. Okay, so we'll start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. So we're going to be speaking this evening about Raja Yoga, which is the 8 limbs of yoga that I'm pretty sure you are familiar with. And all of these various limbs, asana, pranayama, all of the ones that we've studied leading up to meditation and then samadhi connection with the divine, form this beautiful package of yoga. And there are other yogas. We all know that. There's bhakti, there is jhana, the yoga of coming to know who you are. I actually attend church at the Vedanta Society in New York City. Vedanta tends to be very jhani. There's also karma yoga, the yoga of action and selfless service. And we can certainly combine all of these into our practice. But what we're looking at here is this beautiful recipe that Patanjali came up with in his Yoga Sutras for the yogic way of life, which is about spiritual growth. Even though most people out there, most people on Instagram think it's all about physical health, and certainly there are aspects that can contribute to physical health, but it's really a spiritual process. And its sister, Ayurveda, is more about the physical. We'll talk about both. So, when we talk about asanas, the yoga postures that most people think of when they hear the term, asana practice can change over time. And one of the beautiful things about it is that you don't have to do the same kind of practice when you're 70 that you did when you were 20. So you can radiate, you can gravitate to the kind of practice that reflects who you are at any given time. And sometimes you want something that's more athletic, sometimes you want something more restorative, sometimes a little bit in the middle. And there are opportunities for all of that. And there are also some specific postures for some specific issues that come up as we get older that we might want to focus on. So for skin, this is fish pose. And of course, you can just see by looking at her that that's going to get some blood into the face and perhaps rev up the skin a little bit, give you a little bit of brightness there. Now, I chose this particular image instead of one of the other listings that you see written here because I can't do the fish. I haven't been able to do the fish since I was in a car accident in the 1990s. So some things are good and maybe just not good for us. And I've learned so much of that from Stella. She sings the praises of chair yoga for older people. And when she first told me that 10, 15 years ago, I was thinking, well, that's just because people don't get up and down off the floor and then they can't do it anymore. But what I've come to see is, sometimes even people who were getting up and down off the floor quite a bit develop arthritis or something else, and that's just not possible for them anymore. So we have this lovely accessible yoga movement. Giovanna Heyman wrote a beautiful book, Accessible Yoga, and that's something we can all be open to. But for the skin, it's basically anything that is going to bring circulation to the face. So legs up a wall, really any inversion pose. But again, as we get older, sometimes the big inversions are not going to work anymore. If there are weak eye capillaries or untreated high blood pressure, not a good idea to stand on your head, even if you can. And then one of my favorite pranayamas is Brahmari breath, where we shut off all of the keys to the senses. So this is also a kind of pratyahara practice, closing the eyes and the mouth, and then plugging off the ears and humming, I was taught by the wonderful Maslows that we do 5 of those breaths in different tones. It's very, very calming. Also said to be good for the skin. And then for thinning hair, downward dog, standing forward fold, child's pose, and again, anything that puts the circulation into the head. And these things that I started with, the skin and the hair, are the kinds of things that people tend to worry about the most when they're very early in maturing. So around 50, something like that, when we just start to get the message, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not young anymore. Like, I don't know about you, but I thought I'd be young forever. I remember when I was 26, they had the Republican convention in Kansas City, and I met someone that I learned later was a very famous journalist, William Safire, on the bus. He didn't have correct change, so I gave him correct change. And I was, talking about my life and my writing and all that. I was 26. And he said, I expect a book out of you. You're not getting any younger. It was such a shock because I just thought I would be young forever. But we do think more about the cosmetic aspects of the thing, the younger we are. And later we care more about how we feel physically and spiritually. So for falling asleep and staying asleep, and it's staying asleep that tends to be really hard for a lot of older people. Supported bridge before bed is really, really wonderful. Reclined bound angle, head to knee pose, also recommended for sleep. I just had to use this image for cat cow. Isn't that wonderful? But for joint stiffness, oh my gosh, I didn't spell relieve. Well, we don't want to relive joint stiffness. If we ever had it, we don't want to have it again. But cat cow, Tadasana, mountain pose combined with shoulder rolls, seated spinal twist, good for that. And to uplift the mood and help with depression and anxiety, cobra pose, camel pose, and yoga nidra. And I love this image of yoga nidra with the knees supported, the legs supported. Now, something that has happened of late, and probably many of you have noticed this if you've been around yoga for a long time, there was a time back in the 1970s and so when yoga was not respected or really recognized by Western medicine. It was just stick with calisthenics, stick with running. That was just the era when aerobics was happening. But now, as we all know, they've kind of adopted us, let's say, and you can get yoga and lots of hospital programs. But yoga nidra, our beautiful yogic sleep at the end of yoga class, has now been taken on by Western medicine and Western science, and they call it NSDR, non-sleep deep rest. And the benefits that you get are supposedly unique to non-sleep deep rest. You get, we know, certain benefits, certainly from sleep, certain benefits from meditation and the brain going into these different wonderful states of healing. But non-sleep deep rest is supposed to have its own contribution to that and also helps with depression and anxiety. Some years ago, I guess I was 52 and another person on the no, she was 52. The other person on the panel was 52. I was 62. That was it. And we were on a panel about aging. And I guess the person that put the panel together was 30, and she thought that 52 and 62 was sufficiently old, that we were experts on that. But she asked questions like, how do you deal with the depression that comes with aging? And we're just writing notes to each other and kind of giggling under our breath like teenagers, like, what? What are these questions? What are these stupid questions? We're not depressed. Well, we were babies as you think about, excuse me, the aging process. But, excuse me, but this is the kind of thing that people do have to deal with more as time goes by, unless you have a very strong spiritual foundation that can take you supportively through seeing things happen, through the loss of friends and loved ones, through watching friends suffer with debilitating illnesses that you can't do anything about, kind of being betrayed by some of the messages that you've been given, like if you exercise and you eat well and you do everything right, then you're going to feel and look great. And one day when you're 98, you'll fall out of an apple tree. Well, that sometimes happens, but it often does not. And so we're kind of met with some of these shockers as we get older. And it's difficult to put up with those, especially as our Ayurvedic doshic makeup is also getting some influence from Vata, which is a very flighty dosha prone to anxiety that we'll talk about in a little bit. But while we're still on yoga, meditation and the concentration that then leads to meditation is part of the 8 limbs of yoga. There are just a million reasons why meditation is a great thing to do, especially when you're older, but at any time in life and when you're younger as preparation for being older. So you can read what I've written here, and you probably have read it elsewhere, perhaps many times. They started doing studies on the benefits of meditation way back in 1970. There was a Dr. Herbert Benson at Harvard University who was the first to take a Western look at what meditation actually does to the brain and the body. He was looking at that time at practitioners of transcendental meditation. They've since looked at insight meditators and other kinds of meditation. And basically, it seems to work, whatever kinds you do. My favorite study is one that showed that people who had meditated regularly for 5 years or more were 12 years younger physiologically. That had to do with body mass index, cholesterol, LDL, joint flexibility, hearing, vision, all the things that supposedly go south over time. People who had been meditating for 5 years, and again, they were looking at TM people who meditated twice a day, they were 12 years younger. Stopping smoking only gives you 7 years. So meditation is very, very powerful beyond what we know it does for our spiritual life. It's great for the physical body as well. And the other great thing about yoga is that it helps us to make peace with mortality and immortality. The Gita says the soul is never born, nor does it ever die. There's another place in the Gita where Krishna is saying that the wise mourn neither the living nor the dead. And that's such a tough concept for us in the physical body and seeing what we see and acting in this three-dimensional universe. And yet, that beautiful idea, whether we got it first from yoga or from a wonderful grandmother in a religious tradition or however it came to us, just that idea that we are more than the body. And yoga tells us we are even more than the mind. We are that true self, the Atman, that's the expression within us of Brahman, of all that is. So as we look at the yogic teachings, we can be a little bit detached from planet Earth. Not that we're not fully present as long as we're here, but we're fully present without superglue. And that helps us both to live well and to leave when the time comes to do that. But as I said earlier, and as you well know, being part of Soul Space, yoga has a sister, and that is Ayurveda, the science of life. It's a little bit confusing for people that think of yoga as a very physical thing to hear, oh no, yoga is spiritual, Ayurveda is physical, and they're both a little bit of both. They both certainly come from spiritual roots, the same tradition. The rishis who brought yoga into being were also doing what would have been called the scientific method at that time. Instead of doing double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, they were paying very close attention to nature. And they were also going very, very deep into meditation. And with this study, they were able to come up with how life works on Earth. So Ayurveda is about living in harmony with nature. It's about customizing the way we treat ourselves by coming to understand our constitution. And if you are new to Ayurveda, you can take a constitution quiz. My favorite is in Deepak Chopra's first book, Perfect Health. I think it is the best quiz anywhere, but there's also a good one on the Ayurvedic store, banyanbotanicals.com. But what we're going to see in this presentation is that as time passes, regardless of your personal prakriti or your combination of the three doshas in your own body, which is imprinted upon you at the time of conception, it's just right and it doesn't change. But what happens is some of these can get out of balance at different times in your life. And part of that can be what phase of life you're in. And as we get older, we all become more vata. Vata is very light, it's very flighty. So we want to pacify vata. I love this picture of the bowl of soup with the steam coming out of it. Anybody sane would wait until the steam wasn't coming out of the bowl before they ate it. I would probably try to sip it just the way it is, because as a person who's largely vata anyway, and now in the vata time of life, that warmth is just something that I really, really crave. So these are just little tools for Vata and for feeling wonderful in the Vata time of life, which is some people say kind of after 50, some people say after 60. I kind of leave it at 55, but you'll start to know when there's more Vata influencing your life. So little things, you'll look at your hands one day and say, where did all those bones come from? Where did all those veins come from? Those weren't there last week. Well, that's Vata. Or if you find that you wake up and you're a little bit stiff, or if you find yourself experiencing some anxiety in a situation that traditionally wouldn't have done that to you, that could be some of this excess Vata giving you some Vata imbalance, and certainly feeling cold. I used to wonder why all the old people went to Florida and Arizona, and then I got old, and it's like, oh, that's what happens. They were cold all the time. Now I am too. So the soup, the oatmeal, the sweater, the scarf, the warm spiced almond meal, all almond milk, all these things are really helpful. Vata needs dependability. If you travel as a Vata, you're going to need to give yourself extra time to get over time zones. Things that would have been, okay, I just got in from London last night and I'm going to work this morning. That's not going to work in the Vata stage of life. Or if you try to make it work, you'll pay with your health. You want to protect yourself from what's upsetting. I tell people that I would only move from New York City if the noise just got too much for me. The sirens and the subways are really, really loud. And with Vata going on, you just don't need more of that. We talked about kind of bringing your yoga to the point where that's going to be something that isn't necessarily so stimulating, or maybe not all the time. Also, some of these other kinds of exercise, swimming, walking, dancing. And it used to be, you just put on your running shoes and go run. But later on, as you get more Vata, it's just good to warm up. Walk first, maybe a little bit of very gentle stretching once you're warm. And calming pursuits all are going to help Vata be happy. And a happy Vata is a happy mid and later life. So Ayurveda has ideas about food, and Western medicine has ideas about food, and crazy people on social media have ideas about food. So we are pretty much bombarded with ideas about something that in many parts of the world are so simple. I remember traveling in Nepal, and we were trying to get from Pokhara to the Buddha's birthplace, and it was a very, very, very long ride. I think it was about 10 hours. And I was getting so hungry. We'd pass villages and we'd never stop and eat. And finally, I just said to the driver, what is the deal? Why can't we eat anything? And he kind of looked down like he was almost a little bit embarrassed. And he said, no food for Westerners, ma'am. No food for Westerners. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? Is it like, are we going to get sick? And I finally just said, can you just describe what you mean by no food for Westerners? And he said, only rice and dal, ma'am. Only rice and dal. And I was like, Sarang, that's what we eat. And the best rice and dal I ever had in my life, and maybe the best meal, was the runniest rice and dal that I think I ever had, off a metal plate in a little street side country cafe. And it was wonderful. And I think in many parts of the world, this kind of emphasis that we put on food would be considered very, very strange. But we do have in Ayurveda certain ideas that really help with digestion. In Ayurveda, it's said that while the ultimate cause of disease is that we have forgotten who we are, we have forgotten our spiritual identity, but the more practical cause of much disease is improperly digested food. And how I got into Ayurveda was in my 40s, I guess it was. My cast iron stomach started rusting. And I found particularly when I would travel, my digestion would be off. I'd never had digestive issues before. Well, those of you who know about Ayurveda, you're putting two and two together. It's Vata and it's travel. And so, of course, the digestion is going to be off, but I didn't know that until I found first Deepak Chopra's book and then the Ayurveda Health Retreat and other wonderful things that are out there. And changing my diet along with to be more in accord with Ayurvedic principles was really, really helpful for digestion. But I also remember feeling, I'm missing something. I remember going to an Ayurvedic doctor years later. It was after I'd moved to New York in the early 2000s. And I told her what was going on with me. She did the pulse diagnosis and all that. And then she gives me this piece of paper with the food I was supposed to eat and then all the food that I wasn't supposed to eat, which seemed like a beautiful list of some of the healthiest foods out there. So I wasn't supposed to eat broccoli, kale, chard, arugula. I wasn't supposed to eat kidney beans or chickpeas or black beans. And it was just like, what? What? This is weird. I said, this is some of the healthiest food. And she said, no food is nutritious that you cannot digest. And that's really wise. I've never, ever forgotten that. But on the other hand, I also know about the phytochemicals and the wonderful nutrients that are in those incredibly colorful, fabulous foods. And I don't want to deny myself those either. So, in working with that over all these years, I've come up with something that I'm just calling Nutraveda. And I have to say, I totally stole that from my friend Dr. Joel Furman, who has come up with Nutritarian. But it's a little bit different because this one is based on combining the Nutritarian and the whole food plant-based approach with the wisdom of Ayurveda. So we're going to start with the digestive fire. Ayurveda is always talking about this Agni, this fire in our center. It's kind of like a pilot light, and we need to rev it at appropriate times. So it expects to be fed 3 times a day, but it's really on fire in the middle of the day, high noon, and that is high noon according to the sun and not according to daylight saving. And so we want to have our biggest meal in the middle of the day. We also want to prepare whatever we're eating in ways that are going to help with digestion. So Ayurveda is not really fond of raw food, although there is definitely a teaching that we need a little bit of raw food with our main meals, with our midday meal and our supper. So whether that's some cilantro, some cucumber, some tomato, whatever it might be, a little bit of something for those digestive enzymes. There are wonderful spices, notably ginger, that is going to help with digestion. And we can also, if we're new to more of a high fiber diet, we can just sort of ease into it and not just say, okay, I'm going to have navy bean soup and whole wheat bread and a side of kale. That's a lot for somebody who's used to more of a standard American diet or something easier to digest. But while we're looking at digestibility, we're also going to look at nutrient density. And the most nutrient dense foods on the planet are leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, beans of all kinds, and berries. And we can choose some of these that are easier to digest as well. So spinach is the easiest to digest of the greens. Beans that work well are baby lentils, split mung dal, which are Ayurvedic staples. And then I think I didn't say berries. Did I not say berries? Berries, fabulous. Technically, if you're going to be Ayurvedic chapter and verse, you would eat fruit separate from other foods. And Ayurveda is not the only system that suggests that you'd have the fruit in the morning and then early, and then you'd have breakfast. I've never taken it that far, but that is another suggestion. So some of the practices that we might consider are pre-prepping vegetables and using these digestive herbs with all the meals. One way to do that is to have ginger pickle. I can remember being at the Ayurveda Health Retreat in Alachua, Florida, and Richard Maslow was teaching us to make ginger pickles, where you scrub the ginger, you slice it, you soak it in some lemon juice with a tiny little bit of sea salt and optionally some turmeric and black pepper. And after about 3 or 4 hours, it's ginger pickle. Then again, technically, if you want to follow this chapter and verse, 30 minutes before the midday meal and the evening meal, you'd have a ginger pickle or two. But I don't think about meals till I walk in the kitchen when it's time to eat. And so it's okay also to have your ginger pickle just before a meal. So you want to eat mindfully. The idea of some kind of grace, some kind of silence before a meal is a wonderful, wonderful aid to digestion. And then all of these wonderful um, herbal teas. Now, in Ayurveda, we have a lot of water in the morning, a big gulp of warm or hot lemon water or ginger water. And then through the day, we sip warm, hot, or room temperature water rather than chugging it down and dousing the digestive fire. So, from a Nutraveda lens, we've got our vitality foods. So, these are the greens, the beans, the vegetables, whole grains, seeds, spices. And I left out fruits, but I put them in there too. I see I've put the berries under boosters, but we really need berries every day or 5 days a week. According to the National Institutes of Health, 1 cup of blueberries daily can stave off Alzheimer's, even in people who have the Alzheimer's gene. So, really important there. And then fats by choice. There's a lot of controversy out in the world around fats. And so I kind of like to point out controversy and then leave people to find their own way through it, rather than saying that I have the ultimate answer. So I definitely am not a ghee person. And I know that a lot of people in Ayurveda have great respect for ghee, and it's certainly respected in India for religious purposes as well as culinary and medicinal purposes. As someone with heart disease in my family going back to the Stone Age, I really do not want to mess with any saturated fat, which is known to elevate cholesterol and clog arteries in people who are susceptible to that. And I understand there's a big push out in the world saying, oh, cholesterol doesn't matter anymore. That's really not what the science says if you take a look at that. So that's one reason why I avoid butter in any form and dairy. But I also believe that the kind of dairy that people were eating 4 or 5 thousand years ago in India was very different from what we're eating today. The relationship with the cow was different. The population was very, very small. I know that there are spiritual groups who do their very best to come up with ahimsa dairy that can provide for the needs of their group, but the numbers just don't add up with the number of people on earth who would like to have dairy. It's just impossible, as far as I know, to do that without great harm to the cow and the calf and the ultimate slaughter of both of them. So I personally would stay away from that. So whenever I've done panchakarma, and I've done that at the Ayurveda Health Retreat, I've done it with a medical doctor, an internist, Dr. Scott Gerson in Dunedin, Florida. I've also gone to the Raj in Fairfield, Iowa, a very fancy place that the transcendental meditation people have. And each time I was allowed to do my prep with olive oil instead of ghee. And people have been very accepting of me in that way. Now, I do know a lot of people who don't use any oil at all, or any extracted oil, but might use nuts, seeds, and avocado. And according to Ayurveda, using these is a good idea with some of these harder to digest foods because it grounds them. It makes them a little bit heavier and therefore easier to deal with for somebody with a vata imbalance. So this is a little bit of an Ayurvedic look at the day. So I love this quotation. In truth, yoga doesn't take time, it gives time. And the longer you're on earth, the thing that you value the most is time. So that's pretty. So we want to get up early. And I know that sometimes that's easier said than done, especially if you have trouble sleeping through the night. I've had some periods since I've been in my later years where I fall asleep just fine. I always fall asleep fine, but then I'll get up at 1 or 2 or 3. And if I were awake enough to get up and be productive, it wouldn't be so bad, but I just lie there and it's, not good. And so getting up at 6 o'clock can be tough. But ideally, if your sleep is good, if you've had enough sleep and you can get up with the sun, that means that you're using those energies of that time of day to help propel you through your day instead of working against the energies. Because if you sleep in, certainly after 7, those energies are really shifting into something a little bit quieter. Oh, I love my typo. If you can. All right. Well, that might get you up. Get up and dance a can. So splash your face. Some people say 7 times for the 7 chakras to wake you up. Scrape your tongue. And that's just to get that metabolic debris, off your tongue. If you've ever done water fasting and you know that your tongue just grows argyle socks when you're super detoxing a lot, well, a little bit of that happens every night. So that's the rationale behind scraping the tongue. And then swish your mouth, meaning oil pulling, which is something a lot of people do. If you want to ask more about that, we will have a little Q&A. That's when we really hydrate because we dehydrate overnight. So you want a large mug of warm or hot water with lemon or ginger. You want some early morning sunlight. And even if this is just to go out on a balcony or a patio for a few minutes, maybe you could meditate out there. Maybe you do your yoga asana practice out there. Maybe you've got a dog who wants to go out for a walk. But when you get out almost as soon as you wake up, even if the day is overcast, there's enough sunlight there to tell your pineal gland that it needs to be operating on this lovely schedule of producing melatonin at night to help you sleep. We do produce less melatonin as we age, and that means after our mid-30s, but you can really do a lot to restore that if you get that early morning sunlight. Then we want to do some asana practice. It's very important. In yoga, we say you're as young as your spine. Pranayama, meditation. They always say nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd spent more time at the office, but I have a feeling a lot of us will say, I'd wish I'd spent more time in meditation. And then at your own pace, when the time is right, you do your shower. If you've got time, maybe it's a weekend, you can do dry skin brushing, and then you can do a warm oil massage. Again, I keep going back to Dr. Chopra's Perfect Health. I love that book. He's got a description in there. I have a description in Age Like a Yogi. Then you have your lovely breakfast. Oops. And some of the standard kind of Ayurvedic foods, stewed apples are really common. Ayurveda likes lovely grains, with some spices and maybe some cooked dried fruit in there. You can cook the grains with almond milk or oat milk, and It's just very creamy and comforting and wonderful. And then start your day with faith, generosity, and positivity because there's enough of the other stuff out there. So do your work as a karma yogi to the glory of God. I feel that one of the greatest threats to health and tranquility in the present time is that unless I'm the only one, and I don't think I am, we are literally working ourselves to death. I remember thinking as a little girl how lucky I was to be living in the era that I was because we had all these labor-saving devices. And in the old days, people used to work 10-hour days, 6 days a week. People work 10-hour days, 6 days a week now, and 7 days a week. People send emails out on Saturdays and Sundays, regardless of the recipient's Sabbath. It's absolutely shocking that we have turned work into a god. And I think it's a really good idea if we stop that. And we want to take time away from work for that important midday meal. If we've shifted from breakfast, lunch, dinner to breakfast, dinner, supper, as Ayurveda would recommend, you don't want to be having your heaviest meal of the day while you're surrounded by spreadsheets. You want to come ye apart a while and have that meal. 10 minute stroll after the meal. This is not for exercise necessarily. You don't want it to be a power walk, but you want it to aid your digestion. A second meditation in the late afternoon can give you a second wind for the evening. Light supper before 7 p.m. ideally, another 10-minute stroll, or just lie with your left side down. Electronics go off an hour before bed. And if you do have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, Richard Maslow, again, one of my great mentors and gurus in Ayurveda, taught me to do the warm sesame oil foot massage. Oh my gosh, I didn't proofread this well enough. Food massage. Well, I suppose that would be fun too. But we are talking about a foot massage. You know, the easiest way to warm that sesame oil at nighttime when you just want to go to bed is just rub it in your hands. You know, just rub, rub, rub and get a lot of that warmth built up. That's going to warm the oil. And then massage your feet. And it doesn't have to be for a long time unless it's feeling really great and you want to do it for longer, that's fine. And then put on loose socks. If you get up in the night and you're afraid you could slip, put on socks that have some of those sticky things on the bottom. But you definitely want to wear the socks, excuse me, so the oil can absorb. Why this helps sleep so much, I have never really understood, but it's kind of amazing what it does to help with sleep and sleeping through the night. That's one of the things that helps me a lot when I go through one of those wake up in the night phases. You do want lights off by 10, no devices charging in the bedroom, and you sleep like a baby Buddha. So, I've got a little gift for you if you want it, and that is the recipe guide that goes along with the book Age Like a Yogi. My editor said he didn't want recipes in the book, so there are only two recipes, I think. There's the Ayurvedic chocolate shake that comes from Talia Lutzker's book, The Ayurvedic Vegan Kitchen. And then there's ginger pickles. Oh, and there's kitchery. So I guess three recipes if you count ginger pickles. But we had a whole lot of recipes, and they were donated by some very cool people, including Saima Masla, whom I absolutely adore. And I know I just mispronounced her name, so apologies. But they're recipes from wonderful people who understand plant-based cuisine and Ayurvedic cuisine. And it's just a little ebook. But if you subscribe to my blog and newsletter at mainstreetvegan.com, I'd be happy to send that to you. And if then you decide you don't want my blog and my newsletter, it's a really easy one-click unsubscribe. And I would be so grateful if you would just open it and click unsubscribe instead of saying report spam. Because if you report spam, then the person gets flagged and they're sent to Google jail. I mean, they're not allowed to use their website for weeks at a time. And it's so easy to just say, oh, I don't want that anymore, spam. But if you could please just unsubscribe, that's very helpful to the sender. And if you would like to purchase Age Like a Yogi, I hope you will. I put so much of myself into it, and there's also so much of the lovely Soul Space ladies and their spouses in it, because I did study yoga with them. I'd already studied Ayurveda with Richard, but I did yoga teacher training and some other classes during the pandemic and after. So there's an awful lot of these people that we admire and adore inspiration in Age Like a Yogi. And I got to do the audiobook, which was just totally cool. And I got to read it in a studio in the theater district of New York City, in the same building that has the Capezio shop. So if you don't think that that made my inner teenager feel like she had grown wings, that was pretty cool. And I do use this quotation from Dr. Dean Ornish at the end. It is on the cover of Age Like a Yogi. And I'm so proud to have it because Dr. Ornish brings together the best of modern nutrition with a yogic background. So some of you probably know that prior to Dr. Dean Ornish's work in the late 1980s with advanced heart disease patients, it was not believed that atherosclerotic plaque could be reversed. There was debate as to whether it could be stopped, but reversal was just believed impossible. But Dr. Ornish was a young internist and also a yogi. He was a follower of Swami Satchidananda, and he believed that it could be reversed. And so he tried to get funding for a study, and he did a proposal and he said, I want to show that through yoga and meditation and a low-fat vegetarian diet and like group support, sangha, that this heart disease can actually be reversed. Well, nobody would give him any money, and he was so discouraged. And he went to his guru and said, I don't understand it. Nobody wants to fund this study. And Swami Satchidananda said, you have to stop talking like a yogi because that's not who you're talking to. So you need to tell them that it is a low-fat, high-nutrient diet, leave out vegetarian, leave out yoga, say mild exercise, don't talk about Sangha, it's just group support, and don't talk about meditation, call it stress management. And when he did that, he got the funding, and the rest is history. And his New York Times bestseller, Dr. Dean Ornish's program for reversing heart disease, chronicles all of that. And another little interesting story is that that title comes from Random House, his publisher. The title that he wanted was Opening Your Heart, because it really happens on a couple of levels, physical and spiritual. That's what happens when your doctor is a yogi. So, hi, thank you all for being here. Oh, I see people I know. Hi, Maggie. Hi, Beth. Hi, Nancy. Hi, all the people I don't know and the people that I should know. Marissa, Diane. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, just hi, everybody. Because oh, Dina. Okay, so our paths either have crossed or will. And thanks, everybody, for being here. And I guess we have a few minutes. Oh, thank you, Marissa. That's so kind. If you have any questions, you can either unmute yourself or, oh, I'm getting love. Woo-hoo-hoo. I was thinking the other day, is that Stan? Oh, Stan, bless your heart. Stan and I go back. We have been known to walk the streets of New York City singing show tunes. Stan can carry a tune. I cannot. Okay. Any questions? Well, thank you for not having any questions while I was coughing and sneezing. That's polite. Anybody have anything otherwise? Oh, thank you, Ruth. That's very kind. Okay, well, we can meditate for 4 minutes and then we'll quit. That usually scares people into coming up with a question.
Victoria, what do you have for breakfast?
I always have, if my bananas are ripe, I have that Ayurvedic chocolate shake. Part of it, I think, is because I was always put on diets as a kid, and the idea that I can have a chocolate shake for breakfast is just saying, like, see, I told you. But what it has in it, and there's a full recipe for it in the little e-guide that you can get if you want it. But it's basically the way I do it, non-dairy milk, cacao powder, flaxseed, a vegan protein powder, amla, which is Indian gooseberry, highest antioxidant substance on the planet, a spice blend that I call morning spices. So it's mostly cinnamon and it's also ginger, nutmeg, cardamom, clove. Clove is the highest antioxidant spice in common usage. It's very, tasty, and so you don't want to use too much of it. I put in some allspice and some mace if I have those, and I just mix it all together. So it's just easy to put in. And did I say bananas? Yeah, 2 bananas and a couple of dates. And that's just it. And if I don't have ripe bananas, well, first I kind of get sad and allow myself to feel my feelings. And then whatever's around, oatmeal with stewed fruit. Vatas really aren't supposed to have raw apples, but I love to do an apple sliced crossways so you can see the star and nut butter. And then I have some dates, maybe a little celery on those mornings. And if I go to breakfast with Stan at Le Pain Quotidien, I have oatmeal and I bring my own walnuts now because they used to have good raw walnuts and now they have fried honey dipped walnuts. And I also bring some of those morning spices.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for a lovely talk full of wisdom, but also super practical. I was wondering, do you have a particular vegan protein that you recommend?
You
Protein
know,
powder?
I like the one from Complement, Complement. The website is lovecompliment.com. I know the people who start this company. So Dr. Joel Kahn, who's a plant-based medical doctor, really spiritual guy up in Michigan, and Matt Frazier, the no meat athlete, and Pamela Ferguson, who is a PhD level dietitian in Canada, and they're salt of the earth and they're just good people. So every product they have, I'm just in love with. And it's the only company that I've ever been an affiliate for. So in a way, I feel kind of weird recommending it, except the reason I'm affiliate is because I recommend it. So if you do want to order anything from them, they have a wonderful multivitamin for people who are plant-based. And otherwise, it's lovecompliment.com, and if you use the discount code Main Street all caps, you get 10% off. And usually when you do that, it's just for the first order. But because I am grandfathered in or grandmothered in or something, my understanding is if you use that Main Street for your first order, you get the 10% off for the rest of your natural life. I believe that is true. And that protein, it's pea mostly, but it has some other stuff in it as well. And I really think, just read labels and kind of go with your gut. Now, there are a lot of people who don't believe in protein powder at all. Dr. Michael Greger, this wonderful plant-based physician who wrote How Not to Die and How Not to Age, he calls protein powder the white sugar of the protein world. And I think that's probably true. And I do think that on a fully plant-based diet, it is very easy to get adequate protein. However, you need more when you're older, a little more kind of in your 60s, really more when you hit 70. And and I just want to be sure. And so I do use that in the morning. Um, yeah. Oh, thank you, person on iPhone. Okay, the chats are always so nice. All righty. Any famous last words before we go on to the rest of our evenings? And I just want to say to anybody who's listening to the recording who was told that this was at 7:30, that's my fault. My ego wants to blame it on my iCalendar, but it was me. Aha, beauty secrets. That's so sweet. Um, just trying to live this way, maybe picking a good mom. My mom was really attractive. And in fact, both my parents, when I was a kid, they both looked like actors. My dad looked like an actor named James Mason, and my mom looked like an actress called Ava Gardner. And there's like stories in my childhood of walking in the middle of an Ava Gardner movie and my screaming out, "Who's that man kissing mommy?" And so, they were kind of pretty people. And I remember at my wedding when I was 27, it's like in walks my mom. It's like, okay, there goes everybody's looking at the bride. So yeah, it's nice to be grateful for your genes. I don't do anything special like skincare wise. I have at times in the past. If I were going to do something special today, I would probably use a brand Om Botanical because they're real natural, they're Ayurvedic, they're cruelty free, they're all plant based. But the truth is, I mostly just use sesame oil and kind of water. And, I'll use a little grainy cleanser every week or so to get the dead skin off, but nothing very fancy. Does anybody have one you like, a regimen you want to put in the chat?
What was the name of the skincare you would use if you did?
Om
Home?
Botanical. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have a wonderful cleanser. They have a really good all natural sunscreen, and they have some serums that are kind of cool um, with Ayurvedic different reasons for why they're cool. I need things to be simple. I when a company tells me they have 5 different serums, I don't know why you need 5. I just want there to be like the serum for the dry skin, the serum for the oily skin. That's easy to pick from. But when it's like 5 different herbs and things, I know the reason companies do that is that then you'll buy more than one. But I like more close my eyes and point. Marissa is saying Living Libations. Ooh, what a great title. Great name. Ah, nice. And I think there's something to be said, just for the sesame oil. The Sanskrit word for oil, sneha, means love. And it's amply used in Ayurveda on the body. The massage in the morning, which is so pacifying for vata. It's also good if you do that whole body warm oil massage and it's winter time. It's like having another layer on. It just somehow um, keeps you warm and feels good. And I think another thing that's kind of fun and kind of youthening is to discover some new products like these. Like we have all these recommendations now, and we can look at them. This is the kind of thing certainly I would have done when I was a teenager, when it was all new and fresh. And it's like, oh, cool, I get to use interesting stuff on my face. Well, you do that for 40, 50 years, and it's like, all right already. And yet you can kind of go back to some of that and feel a little bit younger. And I'll just close with something that is a little not about skincare, but it's kind of about making yourself younger. It occurred to me that whenever I'm in yoga nidra in a yoga class, and that teacher is saying, relax your toes and relax your feet, that I'm not hearing that person's voice. I'm hearing Stella back in London on that second floor studio in 1968. And I'm on a blanket because they didn't have sticky mats in 1968. And I'm just there. And I have a theory that during Yoga Nidra, I'm 18 again, and that's helping me regenerate. And I mentioned this to Dr. Scott Gerson, the Ayurvedic physician that I told you about. And he said that sounds like one of those things that they talk about in the Yoga Sutras that are like magical powers. I'm blanking on the Sanskrit word. Do you know what I'm trying to say, Dan?
A
Siddhi,
Siddhi,
Siddha,
yeah,
Siddhis or Siddhas?
Siddhi, I believe. And the Siddha is one who has a Siddhi. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, because usually you think those things are things like, you can defy gravity and, jump over mountains and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not aspiring to that, but I do have a sense that how we see ourselves, in some degree at least, becomes how we present ourselves. And so I don't mind having 10 minutes or so, 3 or 4 times a week, being 18. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you for everyone else for attending. Beautiful group.
Good night,
Have
all.
a beautiful evening, everyone.
Till next time. Thank you.
And thanks for Mary Lynn Patrick. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I just saw the name of somebody that I haven't talked to in 10 years. So, hi, Mary Lynn. Wow. You never know where you're going to find a longtime friend and new friends. All the best. Good night, all.
Too.
Hi,
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Good
Thank you.
night.